Alright, quick update on GalaGames. So we're going to start off talking about the market structure and how our previous predictions panned out, and subsequently telling you what I think is going to be playing out next. And then we'll be moving on to the lower time frames, talking about the risk metrics, some oscillators and momentum indicators that you definitely need to keep your eyes on if you want to be privy on what the next move is likely going to entail. So with that being said, let's jump right off into the market structure. So there's a very prominent head and shoulders panning out on this chart right now. I'll give you the price target of it in 1 second. If we just draw it out quickly, you can see this is absolutely beautiful panning out right now. The price target of this would be predicting that if we break down, let's say we break down in the next 2 days or so, which will give us enough time to slowly trickle down to 4.9 cent. This should be yielding us a price target of a 3.1 cent Gala, which is not too far off where I've been predicting that we're going to move down to. This would only be about 32% down from our 2 cent price target. Now, a lot of people might think that 2 cent is too bearish for Gala, but I've actually been predicting this since up here at 9 cent. You can see we've been predicting a 77% drop on Gala, and we're currently already down, more than 42%. I'm really predicting about another 60% drop for Gala to come down to its bear market lows. Nonetheless, we did make another short-term prediction in our last Gala update. We were round about here on the 10th of June, and you can see we were talking about this 48% move back down to this previous high. This was resistance, and then we flipped it as support. So this box, I guess you can call it a box down here, because you've got a touch point here and a touch point here. This is really where I think we're moving down to next. I'm going to be more bearish than conservative and say that I think we'd be moving down to the low of this, which, like I said in the previous video, this would be a 48% drop. Since that last video, we've moved down almost 31%. So in the short term, in the next week and the next 2 weeks, I still think about another 25% drop down to the 4 cent region is likely before we can expect anything reminiscent of a bounce. Now, am I saying that this is the area to buy down here at 4 cent in case we have a bounce? Absolutely not. I'm really not interested in 1 or 2 day bounces. I think if you're a veteran of my channel, you know that. I prefer to call what's going to be happening in the next week or two. Whether we have a bounce in the next day or whether we bounce for the next 2 days really doesn't change the market structure, because as you can see, when we look at this, you've got highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, all over the board. So we're very clearly bearish right now. It's not just Gala, it's the same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin in the past day actually bounced back up. Yes, it was yesterday rather. We bounced back up, retested Bitcoin's previous all-time high in 2017, and we started to head back down. So none of the markets are looking too bright right now, and subsequently, once again, giving you a quick update, if we do fall beneath the floor, and also this is kind of beautiful because in the next 2 days, in the next 2 to 3 days, this low that we have down here at 4.93 cent for Gala is actually going to be coming into the neckline of this head and shoulders, which once again is going to be yielding a price target all the way down here at 3.1 cent. This is where I think we're going to be moving down to next. Now, I don't normally like having so many predictions on the same chart, but nonetheless, this is what I've been calling for. I think the next move down, 3.9 cent after we take down that floor, 3 cent is going to be in play, and then down here at 2 cent, this is where I find it much more likely that we can start seeing a bottoming structure. Anywhere between 2 and 1 cent is what I think is going to be in play. I don't want to predict 1 cent right now, so don't take this as I'm saying we're going to move down to 1 cent. I'm simply saying when we draw our fib from our most recent low to our high, we do have a 1.618 down here at 1 cent. So I do want people to recognize that while I am calling for bear market lows to start coming into play at 2 cent, I would absolutely not be buying until we do get closer to that region. Once again, I take it one price target at a time. In the next couple of weeks, maybe in the next month or two, if we do come down to this 2 cent region, I will be updating you on my channel if I think the bottom is in or not. I have not set buy orders down here, even though I think the bottom is going to be around here, because once again, I want to remain malleable as new data comes in. I don't just want to predict this is where the bear market low is, and I will absolutely not change my opinion if we start heading down really quickly. Once again, I always like to be malleable and change my opinion when new data comes in, but there is no different data coming in. Since I've been predicting these drops, I've been predicting them for a while, but the most recent ones, with the most recent one that I've just plotted out today, I think at least 4 to 3 cent is going to be on the table in the next week or two. So that is the market structure. If we do take out the floor at 4.9 cent, we are going to be heading down very quickly to these price targets that I've just given you. Now, let's look at the lower time frames, because we now know what to expect in terms of the price targets. What in the lower time frames is the chart saying? So if we look at the 4 hour, we're going to be starting off with the MACD. What you will notice is that we basically came up to the heart line, we made a lower high from here, and we're already flipping bearish on the 4 hourly time frame. Let's see what the daily time frame's doing. The daily time frame on the MACD is getting ready for a bearish flip as well. This is starting to really converge on itself, and as we're seeing the lower time frames already flip bearish, it's very likely that if we keep on heading down for the next 4, 8, 12 hours, that by time we have the next change in the daily MACD, which will be tomorrow, it's very likely it can flip bearish. If not tomorrow, the day after, especially if we start to see Gala break down and start to head down to this neckline, or even worse, break beneath 4.9 cent, which is the neckline of this head and shoulders. Now, on the 4 hourly time frame, on the money flow indicator, this was the same with Bitcoin. You know, I've been talking about this with Bitcoin, but the money flow indicator got very overextended as a bunch of retail traders came in. How do I know this is retail buying the dip, or how do I know this was retail buying the dip on Gala and Bitcoin yesterday? Well, if you're a veteran to my channel, you probably watched yesterday's video, Bitcoin and Ethereum whale watching. We were looking at what retail wallets are doing. We were noticing that retail is accumulating, and we were looking at whale wallets, and whales, institutions like Celsius were dumping their Ethereum, dumping their Bitcoin. Whales are selling at this moment in time, and retail is gobbling up these cheaper, I don't want to say cheap because I don't think the bottom is in yet, I don't think the real cheap prices have come, but this was not institutions or large money, smart money buying the dip. It was just your average retail Joe buying the dip, and you can already see they are basically almost under the water, because no, they are under the water. Yesterday's pump has been completely taken out. We've got a bearish engulfing candle, which is another important thing to notice. A lot of the time when you have these bearish engulfing candles, it is normally a sign that you are going to see continuation over the next couple of days. So take that with a grain of salt. I do think we're going to be down here at 4.9 and breaking down beneath it in the next couple of days very, very quickly. Now, wrapping up this video of the lower time frames on the risk metrics, we mentioned the MFI. So what I do want to say of the MFI is the money flow headed up very quickly, meaning that money was flowing into the market. Retail was buying the dip very quickly, and normally when you get these massive rallies, you do top out very, very quickly. So I think we're going to start heading down. I think the MFI is very overextended on the daily. It's already starting to come down. There is a lot more room on both the daily and the 4 hourly time frame for money to continue flowing out of the market, and the same with the MACD. While the MACD doesn't tell us how much money is flowing in the market, it does tell us that we've just come up to the heart line and we're flipping bearish. So that is a momentum indicator which will be calling for us to move down very shortly. And let's finish on the risk metrics. Now, unfortunately, the risk metric does not work for Gala on higher time frames. So we have to look at it on the 4 hourly time frame. I believe you can also get it on the hourly time frame. Now, on the hourly time frame, we are basically coming up to some pretty high levels of risk right now. You know, we actually quite recently topped off in these most recent bounces at around about the 60% mark, which is, if you do look at the right side of the screen, this doesn't actually correlate to the prices because this was made for Bitcoin, but you can use it over on different altcoins. This is overextended, or it has been overextended, and it's now coming down from being overextended. You can basically see how perfectly the bottoms are called. I'm not going to go back to previous data. I don't want to take too much time on this one. But if you look where the exact local bottom was, once again, emphasizing local bottom because I do not think this is the all-time low for Gala yet. This was 4.9 cent. The risk metric perfectly called the bottom, and now the risk metric has headed up. It is much more risky to be buying at these levels. What does the risk metric tell us? It tells us that at this moment in time, it is more risky to be buying at the exact same level we were at when the bottom was down here. So once again, what's another way of saying this? The bottom is probably not in, and we're probably going to gear up for another move back down to the downside before we come down to a lower risk valuation. And I think this is going to correlate to something like this, where we head down to this 3 cent region very, very quickly. And then the risk might be topped out in the short term. We might have a bounce back up. We might come up to some of these lines that I've been predicting, like 4 cent, 3.9 cent around here before, you know, it has a little bounce as we come back up, and then it heads down finds its low, and this is where I think we're going to be going down to, something like this. Once again, I'm really drawing lines of best fit, so I would not be surprised if it does not play out exactly like this, but nonetheless, this is kind of what I'm looking out to play in the next couple of weeks. Now, once again, I really don't like predicting short-term bounces, especially when we're in a bear market. Doesn't make sense. I am not saying this is 100% going to play out, but I am saying I have a very, very strong feeling, backed up by the technicals, backed up by my gut feeling from trading for many, many years, that there are tons of signals calling for the next leg to the downside. You know, forget about what I'm saying with this breakdown, bounce, breakdown, bounce. What I'm really calling for is in the next couple of weeks to head down to 3 cent. We might have a bounce. It really doesn't matter. I'm not worried about short-term bounces, just like I wasn't worried about this short-term bounce. I'm expecting to head down. Whether we have a bounce or not, it doesn't really matter to me. And then to find our local bottom round about, or the all-time low bottom between the 2 to 1 cent. And once again, I'm not calling for 1 cent to be on the table. My current price target for the bear market low is 2 cent, but I will be updating you as we get closer to this price target, letting you know if I think it is the bottom, and I will also be letting you know if I do plan on buying Gala at this price, because I do think Gala is a pretty interesting project. I do like that Gala's recently partnered with Epic Games. I also made a news update because they've got a relatively cool game coming out on the Epic Games Store that's very reminiscent of Red Dead Redemption 2, but it's got a like a battle royale spin on it. It's a battle royale Red Dead Redemption cowboy type game, and that looks really cool. So I'm definitely going to be planning on playing that on the Epic Games Store, and I do think if that's a success, it's going to be a very good look for Gala Games. Nonetheless, I do think that Gala is going to be a good performer coming into the next bull cycle. However, I would be an absolute idiot if I looked at this chart right now and said, you know, I think Gala is going to do good in the next bull cycle, so I'm going to buy now, even though all of the charts are screaming that we're going to move down in the short term. So I really do think that from where we are right now, Gala is very likely to get slashed in half and then some. I think we're going to come down about another 60% before we find our bear market lows. And once again, you might think this is a bearish prediction. People thought that I was being bearish back here at 9 cent. People thought that I was being bearish as we capitulated below the... I think I got really bearish from Gala when we retested the 618 at 36 cents. So once again, you know, people are always going to be relatively short-minded, especially in the crypto space. I do think the people who are going to win this bear market are the people who are able to recognize the difference between bull and bear cycles and able to switch their opinion as we do come into these bottoming structures, which right now we're not in. You know, a breakdown back to the lows into a head and shoulders while the risk is exceptionally high, while the money for retail is constantly flowing in the market, and while the MACD, other oscillators like the squeeze mom, are getting ready to break back down to the downside, which they already are on the 4 hour. We had a tiny bounce on the we had a tiny bounce over on the squeeze mom, and we're already losing momentum and heading back down to the downside. So once again, what do I think is going to happen? Let's wrap up the video. I think we're coming down to the neckline at 4.9 cent of this head and shoulders. We might have a little bounce. Doesn't really matter, but I think we're going to be promptly heading down to 3 cent. We might have a small bounce from 3 cent, but then I think we'll be heading down to 2 cent, which is where I'll be a lot more confident in predicting that the bottom is in/near. So that's what I think is planning out for Gala right now. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you found some value in today's content. And as always, my friends, cowboy out. Peace.